Did Harry Kane's performance show just how far Chelsea are from Europe's elite? This was a masterclass in how Bayern set up to unlock Harry Kane's world-class level whilst also exposing flaws that Chelsea just can't get away from. And so we'll deep dive into why Bayern's setup brings out the best of Harry Kane, the key weakness that Bayern exposed that led to the winning goals, and why Cole Palmer's performance proved he belonged in Europe's elite. So let's start by breaking down Harry Kane's performance and how Bayern's structure allowed him to dominate Chelsea from the first whistle. Now, Harry Kane scored 2 goals in this game and was heavily involved in the build-up for the penalty. But it's not just goals that make Harry Kane world class. And the way that Kompany sets up Bayern Munich shows that he knows that too. Now, when you look at Bayern's lineup before the game, it looks like a fairly standard 4-2-3-1 with Harry Kane up top, Elise and Diaz on the wings, and Gnabry in behind Kane in a number 10 position. But when you look at Harry Kane's heat map, you can see he plays nothing like that in this Bayern team. He has his touches all over the pitch, and his playmaking ability is one of the best in Europe. Here he is for Bayern Munich, and he is nowhere near the opposition goal. He is fully involved in Bayern Munich's build-up. And as the ball rotates around to Pavlovic, and he rotates it back to Manuel Neuer, look at who's dropping to create an option as a double pivot alongside Kimmich. Harry Kane. The freedom that he's been given under Vincent Kompany is telling, because this is what he's good at. He's good at linking play, and he still has that energy to get out the pitch as the ball progresses. As Manuel Neuer passes this ball out to Upamecano, he finds the feet of Bowie, but keep an eye on Harry Kane. This is why he's so devastating in this Bayern Munich system under Kompany, because his timing of when to arrive into space as the ball progresses is so good. He finds the feet of Elise, Elise cuts in, and Harry Kane is just drifted forward into the space vacated by Caicedo, who has to move out to Elise in that right wing position. That ball is played into Harry Kane's feet, he drives forward and plays that ball out to Bowie, and then it's again that playmaking ability. And as he plays that ball out to Bowie, it makes a lovely little underlapping run inside into that right half space, away from Cucurella, and then a lovely little ball. Cut back ball into the centre of the 6-yard box. Diaz steps over it, and Elise has a chance on goal. Well, it is a good save, really good save from Sanchez, but Elise should score. But it's that stitching together of play that Harry Kane's doing now. You can see that he's probably going to do more of that as he gets older and drops deeper and deeper into the pitch. But this is just one example of how good his movement was. Because here he is again, this time a little higher up the pitch, but you can see the kind of problems he causes again. Dropping away from that back line, drawing out tossing here, and it creates a gap in between that Chelsea back line. And as Luis Diaz receives this ball from Lima, he plays a lovely little 1-2 back into Lima's feet, who's made a lovely little underlapping run into that left half space. And then Tosin has to move away from Harry Kane. And this again is where Harry Kane becomes dangerous. As Lima progresses with the ball, he squares up Tosin 1v1. Now look at Harry Kane's positioning here. Arriving late onto play, and he has a choice of what to do. He can drive directly in between Cucurella and Tosin and create a little bit of an overload in that central area so that Lima can cut in and pass out to Elise. But Harry Kane wants goals. And what he does here is makes a lovely little overlapping run down that left-hand side, spotting that the space is outside Tosin and creating that 2v1 overload. As he makes that movement, Lima just lovely little ball into him. Harry Kane takes that first touch with his right foot, draws it away from Tosin, and has a left-footed chance on goal. He should score here, but again, Sanchez stands up well. He should direct it into either of the corners, but I'm not one to tell Harry Kane how to finish. And because of his goals against Chelsea last night, he becomes one of only 3 players to score 20 plus goals for 2 separate clubs in the Champions League, joining Neymar and Cristiano Ronaldo in the record books. But this freedom that Harry Kane had to drift where he needed to, especially in the central areas of the pitch, wasn't only limited to Harry Kane. And I think this is where Bayern Munich in particular and Champions League teams are going this season. The freedom that PSG had last season on the road to winning the Champions League to drift to different positions on the pitch is similar to what I saw in this game against Chelsea. And you can see they set up in that 4-2-3-1, but what usually happens is one player usually drops into the back line out of either Pavlovic or Kimmich, with Stanisic moving high and wide into that left wing back position, Pavlovic loving to drop into that left centre back position and make that back free with either of Tar and Upamecano, and even sometimes Pavlovic staying in that central area, and this time Kimmich dropping in between the two centre backs to create an option. But then this allows Lima to move up into that centre midfield position and invert so that they're not overloaded in that central area. And Chelsea pressed well in that first 5 to 10 minutes. But what Bayern Munich did was they made sure they had an overload ahead of that Chelsea front line, so that Chelsea couldn't press as aggressively as the game wore on. And like I said, as Kimmich moves into that position, Pavlovic moved wide. You even saw instances of Gnabry and Harry Kane moving into a double pivot, with Lima moving up into that striker position and Stanisic creating width down that side, Elise down this side. Elise was probably the only one that didn't really have that freedom of movement to move inside. And I think it wasn't because he didn't want him to or thinks he can't. It's because he wanted to create that 1v1 matchup between Elise and Cucurella, which we'll come on to in a second. But so many times you saw stuff like this. You know, Kimmich in between the centre backs, Pavlovic in that left centre back position, and Gnabry and Harry Kane in that double pivot. And like I said earlier, what Bayern loved doing against Chelsea last night was creating that overload in that right side. Even having a 2v2 or 3v2 to allow Elise to square up 1v1 with Cucurella. And what they did is when Kimmich dropped into that back line or Pavlovic into that back line, Lima was allowed to drift inside. And he wasn't just staying ahead of that defensive block from Chelsea. He was moving into that right half space, drawing away, tossing away from Cucurella, so that when that ball was with Elise, there was 1v1 opportunities. And Cucurella is a decent defender 1v1, but he was getting skinned time and time again. And even when Tosin slept for a moment, Lima would make that lovely dart into that right half space, be played through by Elise, and he just didn't know how to handle that right side combination of Elise and Lima. But the frustrating thing from Chelsea's perspective is that they competed well, especially in that first half, and they still managed to find themselves 2-0 down. And that's the difference between the Conference League and the Champions League. And although there were some individual errors in the goals, there was still an issue with Maresca's setup. And this is the second goal that Chelsea conceded. Marc Cucurella on the ball, being pressured and cornered down that left-hand side by Bayern. And they did this well for the third goal as well, which we'll come on to in a sec. But Marc Cucurella just plays an underhit pass into that left-sided channel. It's neither for Enzo Fernandez making that movement, nor Neto dropping in. And Lima picks up that loose ball, plays a quick ball into Elise's feet. But the worry here is that centre-back pairing. The lack of reaction once Lima is about to pick up this ball is worrying. They should be sprinting back into that central area, getting goal side of Harry Kane. But even as Lima passes that ball into Elise's feet, and it's a tough pass, real quality pass from Elise around the corner. Chalobah should have been far more inside by this point. He's still just trotting inside. As that ball is played into Harry Kane's feet, you can see that it's Caicedo that's the nearest player to him and has to react. He overcompensates and makes a rash tackle when Chalobah could be there on the cover. But then that's what causes the penalty situation for Bayern Munich. And although that was more individual mistakes, I think the next one is part individual and part Maresca's setup. You can see that Trevor Chalobah receives the ball from Sanchez and he's in that wide centre-back position, really drifting out to the touchline. And what Chelsea like to do is use Robert Sanchez in that centre-back position, either the left centre-back or right centre-back, depending on where the ball is. And this is a problem when you lose the ball, because there's a huge gap in between that centre-back pairing. And as that ball is played into Gusto's feet, he should take a far better touch here. No Chelsea player is probably anticipating what's going to happen. But the problem with playing Sanchez in that right centre-back role is he's never going to move up to be an actual centre-back in the defensive side of the game. You know, when you talk about rest defence and where your positions are to stop counter-attacks, as Gusto's about to lose this ball, look how free Harry Kane is on the edge of the box. You know, Tosin playing him clearly onside if anything was to happen. The ball falls to his feet. Tosin manages to get goal side, but this is Harry Kane's elite finishing. Just bends it into that bottom right-hand corner, shapes it around Tosin, using him as a blocker to restrict Sanchez's eye line. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful finish, but it's avoidable. And that's the most frustrating thing from a Chelsea perspective. But from all that frustration, there was a chink of light. One player stood out from that Chelsea performance, and we all know who it is. But he proved he is Champions League quality. Cole Palmer is the linchpin, especially in these Champions League nights. And here he is for that first goal for Chelsea. And you can see Caicedo winning the ball in that central area. Lovely little play out of pressure and finds the feet of Cole Palmer. And you don't want Cole Palmer in this amount of space. but what was so impressive was his link up with Gusto. And as Cole Palmer receives the ball in space, he carries that ball with pace, lovely dribbling ability, just carrying it 40-50 yards up the pitch, and he has that 2v1 situation against Stanisic in that right side half space. Now there's a lot of things you can do here. You've got Enzo Fernandez making a run in that central area, Neto at the back post, and some players panic, but not Cole Palmer, because he plays a lovely pass into Gusto's feet, and most players here might have made that dart directly in behind Stanisic to receive that return ball. Just a normal 1-2. But what Cole Palmer does here, it plays that ball into Gusto, but instead of making that run in behind Stanisic, he just holds. Just a beautiful understanding of what happens on a football pitch. Turn ball from Gusto, beautiful pass. First time, lovely weight to it. But to hit this with your instep, that side foot, and open out your body and put it into the top corner against Manuel Neuer is insane. Just insane finishing ability from Cole Palmer. But Cole Palmer is not just a finisher. He's a creator, a baller, someone that loves to be on the ball and open up the opposition. And in this situation here, it's definitely a pattern of play that happened numerous times, something that Maresca probably thought of before the game and worked on in training. But it's Cole Palmer in that right-sided half space, just dropping away from that Bayern deep block and having a little bit of space and time on the ball to pick out an option. And as Cole Palmer drops into that deeper position alongside Reece James and Caicedo in that right-sided channel, he drew out Stanisic from that left-back position, creating that gap in between Jonathan Tah and Luis Diaz, and then he has the quality on the ball to find that pass in behind Luis Diaz. And Luis Diaz is a hard worker off the ball, but that ability to see a run in behind is one that he was lacking on in this game. Gusto's off-ball running and speed off the ball was so good in this game. And this is the kind of situation they just didn't take advantage of. Enzo Fernandez in the center of the 6-yard box or the penalty box, and he just weren't able to capitalize. Just an underhit cross that Upamecano clears. But this is the kind of situation they were developing down that right-hand side. Beautiful little combination for the goal and in situations like this. And although Chelsea had good moments in the game and put up a decent performance against one of Europe's elite, this is the Champions League. No longer in the Conference League, can't rest their best players for the Premier League. They have to play the best players in the Champions League and the Premier League week in, week out. And so do they have the quality and the squad depth to really compete across 3-4 competitions? Let me know what you think down in the comments. What do you make of Chelsea's performance? How good is Harry Kane? Is he the best striker in Europe so far this season? And make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Watch another one of my videos up here or on my channel. And I'll see you on the next episode of A Game of Two Halves.